They told you her life was spotless, a fairy tale stitched with ambition and destiny. But what if the truth was buried under a Vegas chapel, a sealed file, and a baby the world was never meant to know about? Listen closely, because the story you think you know just cracked down the middle. For decades, Meghan Markle's rise has been packaged like a glossy dream. Bright smile, California sunshine, elite schools, Hollywood hustle, and then, boom, royalty. Clean, curated, perfect, too perfect. And perfection, darling, always has fingerprints on it. That's where Samantha Markle steps in. Not with a whisper, not with a hint, but with a blade-sharp sentence that slices through the myth like glass. She says Meghan wasn't just chasing dreams in the mid-90s, she says Meghan was married. And worse, she says there was a child. Suddenly, the fairy tale starts sweating, because when you rewind the tape, there's a year that doesn't exist. A full 12 months that vanished like smoke right when Meghan's life was supposedly figuring itself out. The gap year. The mystical, undocumented, no photos, no receipts gap year. The year that lines up a little too perfectly with what Samantha claims happened behind closed doors. June 1994, graduation, applause, caps in the air. Friends scatter into futures filled with dorm rooms and freedom. Meghan's story, she says she paused, took time, traveled, found herself. But here's the problem. Nobody can find her. No plane tickets, no host families, no exchange programs, no candid snapshots, not even a blurry background photo. It's not a break, it's a blackout. And blackout years don't just happen, they're made. Now let's talk about Las Vegas. Not the neon fantasy version, not the champagne-soaked chaos, but the quiet, forgotten chapels tucked just far enough off the strip to make secrets disappear fast. According to whispers tied to the Giuliano family, this is where an 18-year-old Meghan allegedly walked in. Not with friends, not with a dress, not with dreams of romance, but with paperwork. In and out. Less than 30 minutes. Vows spoken softly. Witnesses minimal. No celebration. No proof. Just a marriage. Joe Giuliano. Traditional. Italian-American. Family first. Loyalty bound. Silence valued. A world built on privacy. The exact opposite of Meghan's hunger for visibility, ambition, and escape. Two paths colliding at the worst possible time. And then, everything gets heavier. Because months after that alleged wedding, reality hits hard and fast. Pregnancy, 18 years old, barely out of childhood, standing at the edge of a future she wanted. Northwestern acting independence, while staring straight into a future she never planned. For the Giulianos, this meant duty, responsibility, family unity. For Meghan, it meant a cage. And here's where the story tightens its grip. Mid-1995, a baby girl is born, quietly. No announcements, no public trail, no hospital records tying the child to Meghan Markle. The kind of birth that happens in shadows. Not because it didn't matter, but because it mattered too much. This child becomes the axis of a decision that would define everything. The Giuliano family steps in. They raise her. No adoption headlines, no legal noise. Just an agreement. One condition carved into stone: silence. The baby grows up surrounded by family, laughter, backyard gatherings. To the outside world, she's just another relative. Inside the walls, she's protected, shielded, hidden. And Meghan? She disappears again. Fall 1995. Northwestern University. New campus, new identity. No ring, no baby, no husband, no past. She steps into college life like a woman freshly printed, as if the previous chapter never existed. She studies. She auditions. She builds connections. She reinvents herself with surgical precision. No calls back. No visits, no looking over her shoulder. The door slams shut on the life she left behind. Years roll forward. Acting roles, hustle, spotlight. Reinvention after reinvention until the name Meghan Markle means something shiny, something powerful, something untouchable. And all the while, somewhere in Chicago, a girl grows up carrying familiar eyes, familiar bone structure, a resemblance that doesn't need paperwork to whisper what blood already knows. She lives an ordinary life, clocking in, laughing with family, existing completely outside the narrative, officially invisible, protected by a promise made before she could speak. And then, after nearly 30 years of silence, Samantha Markle says the thing everyone else avoided. One sentence, one crack, one earthquake. If that marriage happened, if that child exists, if those files are sealed for a reason, then Meghan's story isn't just incomplete, it's constructed. And constructed stories? They don't crumble quietly. They collapse when the echo finally gets loud enough. Because secrets don't die, they wait. They wait in courthouse basements where files are stamped sealed. They wait in families trained to keep mouths shut. They wait in faces that look just a little too familiar in the wrong light. And once a secret waits long enough, it doesn't knock, it erupts. By the time Meghan's name becomes global currency, spoken in palaces, printed in headlines, defended by armies of PR professionals, the past she buried is supposed to be untouchable. Too old, too quiet, too undocumented to matter. That's the gamble. That time will erase fingerprints. that silence will harden into fact. But silence has a weakness. It depends on everyone keeping it, and that's where Samantha Markle becomes dangerous. Because Samantha doesn't speak like someone guessing. She speaks like someone who's watched doors closed, timelines rearranged, and history rewritten in real time. Her words don't sound like gossip thrown for attention. They sound like resentment sharpened by memory, like someone who noticed what didn't add up years ago and waited for the right moment to say it out loud. When she says 1995, she's not just naming a year, she's detonating one. Because suddenly people start asking the questions they were trained not to ask. Why was that annulment sealed so aggressively? Why does Clark County neither confirm nor deny its existence? Why does a woman whose life has been dissected down to childhood photos have a full year missing from public record? That kind of silence doesn't protect nothing. It protects something. And then there's the daughter, the invisible center of gravity in this entire story. Those who claim to have seen her don't talk about scandal first. They talk about resemblance, bone structure, eyes, the kind of similarity that makes conversations stop mid-sentence, the kind that doesn't require DNA kits or documents to feel unsettling. She's not chasing fame, she's not stepping forward, she's not selling a story, and that's what makes her existence louder than any interview ever could. Because if she wanted attention, she could have taken it already. Instead, she lives quietly. The ultimate contradiction to Meghan's carefully curated narrative of independence, self-making, and fearless truth-telling. The irony cuts deep. A woman celebrated for owning her story may have built everything on a chapter she refused to acknowledge. And here's where the tension turns nuclear. Because this isn't just about a teenage mistake. This isn't about youthful confusion. This isn't about being human. This is about control. Control of narrative. Control of image. Control of what the world is allowed to know. If Meghan truly left a child behind, not through adoption, not through transparency, but through silence and erasure, then every speech about authenticity starts to tremble. Every interview about finding your voice suddenly echoes hollow. And the timing? Oh, the timing is ruthless because the world has changed. In the 90s, sealed files stayed sealed, families stayed quiet, and women disappeared from their own stories without resistance. But today, secrets leak, faces get recognized, and the internet never forgets what the law tries to bury, which raises the question no one wants to say out loud. What happens if that daughter ever speaks? Not in anger, not in revenge, but in truth. What happens if she doesn't accuse but simply exists publicly? Because she wouldn't need to scream. She wouldn't need to expose documents. She wouldn't need to fight. Her presence alone would collapse the timeline. And that's why this story still feels unfinished. Why sealed records matter. Why silence still holds. Why no one on Meghan's side has ever aggressively denied the specific claims, only dismissed them as ridiculous without opening the books. Because ridicule is cheaper than proof. And proof is dangerous. Somewhere, there is a file with signatures. Somewhere, there is an agreement built on fear and ambition. Somewhere, there is a promise that was never meant to survive the spotlight. And spotlights always move. This isn't about tearing someone down. It's about the cost of erasure. Because when you erase a chapter, you don't just erase pain, you erase people. And erased people don't stay invisible forever. They age, they walk, they resemble, they breathe, they become impossible to ignore. So the real question isn't whether the story is true. The real question is, how long can it stay buried? Because stories like this don't resurface politely. They surface when the silence cracks, when someone slips, when someone speaks, when someone decides the truth deserves air. And when that happens, if it happens, this won't be remembered as gossip. It will be remembered as the moment a perfect narrative met the past it tried to outrun. And the past always catches up.